Merry Christmas. We lost a spiritual giant this past year, Pastor Tony Campola. Some of you may know him. He came here actually a few decades ago to Westside, and I had the privilege of hearing him once speak in Cranford, New Jersey. He was an evangelical Christian pastor whose passion for Jesus and for the gospel was contagious. He was able to creatively hold the tension between the head and the heart, between contemplation and action, between spirituality and justice. We need more people like him in our world. One of his favorite stories was when a skeptic challenged him once about his faith. And he asked, "What if you're wrong about all of this?" And Tony responded, "What if I'm wrong? Well, then I've been loving people, working for justice, and walking in hope all my life. What if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if there's a God who loves us so deeply and has gone to unimaginable lengths and depths to reach out towards you?" This Advent, we've been preparing for tonight. In our tradition, we realize we can't just fast forward to here. We've got to contemplate this mystery. We've got to prepare ourselves to go a little deeper each year with it. We've been looking at the Gospels through their lens, looking at Jesus through the lens of the Gospels. And thank you, Johnny, for your work. We looked at Matthew and we explored how Jesus is an authoritative teacher who teaches us the way of wisdom and how to live in alignment with God's kingdom values. We looked at Jesus through the gospel lens of Marc, who sees Jesus as a humble servant who is caring for the least and the last, the lost and the lonely. We looked at Jesus through the lens of the Gospel of Luke and saw him as the wounded healer who seeks to make us whole and to restore us to the whole community. And then we looked at Jesus in the Gospel of John, the Redeemer, the one who works to reconcile us with God. And tonight, all of these faces of Jesus come together. They converge. Teacher, servant, healer, redeemer, wrapped in the vulnerability of an infant child. Today we celebrate the greatest story ever told. And we are told, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was Christ. And then the Word, Christ, became flesh in the person of Jesus. It is true that God came into the world in Jesus, but it's also true that Christ was present in the beginning, long before Jesus showed up. Franciscan priest Father Richard Rohr writes, "Instead of thinking of Jesus bringing God into the world, perhaps it's better to say Jesus came out of an already Christ-soaked world. Since the beginning of time, God's Spirit has been revealing its glory and goodness through creation, and in the birth of Jesus, Christ becomes uniquely embodied in a human being, fully human, fully divine." Tonight we celebrate the incarnation of Christ in Jesus. The moment when divine love stepped into human history, not with the shout of a king, but with the cry of a child. Tonight we celebrate the mystery of a God who does not stand at a distance, but comes so near as we could ever imagine, into the holy mess of your life and mine, our life together, to live and love as one of us, and to call us to be followers of his way, to become the little Christs that we've been created to be. And as we remembered again tonight through the words that Yami shared with us, the prophets long before Jesus had an inkling of this light. Isaiah writes, "The people walking in darkness have seen it, have seen a great light. On those living in a land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." And John builds on this imagery. And he says of Jesus, in him was the life, which is the light of humankind, of all people. And this light shines in the darkness. And the darkness cannot overcome it. Who among us does not know darkness? Who among us does not know darkness? The darkness of personal struggles, of anxiety and depression that keep us awake at night. The darkness of mistakes that we've made that we can't undo. The darkness of that quiet ache of loneliness even when we're surrounded by people. Who among us does not know the darkness of fractured relationships? Of those relationships of people we loved who are distant from us for whatever reason. The fractured relationships that happen when we say something that we don't really mean and we wish we could take it back, but we can't. Or about the darkness of the injustice of our world. The way that we are destroying God's creation, bringing harm to Mother Earth, scarring it. The way that the gap between the powerful and the powerless seems to widen, and we are ignoring the cries of the poor, of the marginalized and the oppressed. Who among us does not know darkness? And yet the promise of Christmas is this: the light of Christ shines in and through all of it for those with eyes to see. For those with eyes to see. So maybe the Christmas prayer for all of us is, Lord, help me to see. Help me to see. A number of people have shared the recent article by New York Times columnist David Brooks. In it, Brooks reflects on how his understanding of faith has evolved over time. As an agnostic, he once believed that faith was primarily about belief, settling the question of whether or not God exists. He sought books and arguments, thinking that faith was something to be proven or disproven. But here's what he discovered, that faith didn't come through persuasion or information. No, it came through moments of awe and wonder. You've had those moments. Moments when you gazed upon the vastness of a mountain or the ocean. Moments when you looked up into the stars. Or moments when you saw a child in her mother's womb. Moments of awe and wonder. Those moments don't settle all the questions as much as they deepen the questions. They expand the questions. Poet Christian Wyman writes that religion is not made of these moments. Religion is the means of making these moments part of your life. That's what you're doing tonight. You're making one of these moments part of your life, part of your practice. Brooks shared a moment that happened on a crowded subway car in New York City under 33rd Street and 8th Avenue, a place he described as truly the ugliest spot on God's green earth. Some of you have been there. That day he had a shimmering awareness that every person around him had a soul. He saw the divine spark in them. He saw their infinite value. He saw their yearning, their suffering, and their dignity all at once. It didn't prove God's existence, but it led him to wonder if there are all these souls around us. Maybe there's a soul giver. Maybe there's a soul giver. This experience transformed the way that he saw his fellow human beings. It helped him to hold both their brokenness and their beauty, their depravity and their majesty with tenderness and depth. I think this is the awe that we're invited to on Christmas Eve. The awe and wonder of a light that shines in the darkness, as Isaiah and John proclaim, but as many people have given witness to, including the late Jerry Garcia, who said once in a while you get shown the light in the strangest places if you look at it right. The story goes that night after night, a lighthouse keeper climbed the spiral staircase, carrying his little lantern to the top. And one stormy night, the power failed, so the lighthouse keeper grasped a small candle and climbed step by step into the wind and the darkness. And at the top, he placed a tiny flame behind the glass. The whole thing seemed so absurd, so ridiculous, like whispering into a hurricane. But that night, far out at sea, there was a ship that saw the light. The captain later would say it was the faintest light I've ever seen, but it was the only one I could follow, and so he did. I think Christmas is that light. A child born in a forgotten corner of the world, carrying all the hope of humanity, the light of Christ, even the faintest flicker in a subway car or on a stormy light or in the strangest places, has the power to guide us home. So what if the Word truly became flesh? What if God was here with us now? What if the light can pierce even the darkest night? I wrote this poem earlier this year without Christmas in mind, but I share it tonight as a Christmas invitation entitled, "The World Awaits." The world awaits you. The world awaits you. Greet it with your eyes. Embrace it with your presence. Love it wholeheartedly. Every encounter is sacred. The bird flitting on the branch, the spider weaving her web, the child running along the footpath, all of it exists without you. Yet when your eyes are open, the world finds a deeper reflection and belonging in your gaze. Your look, my look, your look ripens things. Your presence kindles possibilities. Your love breathes life, breaking forth like the dawn. In your stillness, find the quiet truth. In your movement, the eternal flow. For you are part of this tapestry, a thread weaving light into the world. This is the call of Christmas, to see the sacred in the ordinary, to carry the light of Christ into the world. And it begins always with seeing. It begins with seeing the divine spark in others, seeing the divine in even the strangest, most unlikely, most unremarkable places, seeing that every act of love, no matter how small, is part of the tapestry God is weaving in this world. It begins with seeing, and it continues with living. Living as bearers of Christ's light. Through our words, through our actions, through our stillness and our movement. Living with the courage to whisper into the hurricane. Trusting that even the faintest candle, the faintest flame can guide somebody home. In a little bit, we're going to light our candles and sing Silent Night. I hope the candle will be a reminder to you that God chose to be born in the lowest of places, the humblest of places. I hope it'll be a reminder for you that even the smallest flicker of hope can become a beacon, and that the darkness, no matter how deep, will never overcome this light. Let it remind you of who you are called to be. A thread weaving light into the world, a bearer of peace and hope and joy and love. So what if you allowed the light to break through? And what if you allowed the light to move out through you? Merry Christmas.